It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Most of you that check us out on podcast or watch us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. You already know that. Been a busy week in the NFL with the rule changes. You know, we talked with Greg Cosell on Monday about the top tight end and offensive line prospects on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Sean King, I thought, was excellent today, talking about where some of these free agent quarterbacks went or even just presumed to be going, like Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. I thought was fascinating from Sean. And, of course, there's a bunch of rule changes in the NFL that either have been pushed through or being discussed. I was all over that on today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Should mention, by the way, the season win totals are out at DraftKings. So Steve and I hit up the NFC season win totals on yesterday's Even Money Betting Podcast. Love those of you that rate and review the show. That's amazing. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. We're going to do my guy John Daigle's first mock draft, maybe only, I don't know, but first mock draft. Very, very exciting. John, of course, you can follow on social media at NotJDaigle. He is one of the superstars over at EstablishTheRun.com. Just an incredible treasure trove of information. You're talking about not only John, but Adam Levitan, Evan Silva, who used to be the co-host on this show. How about this? I spoke to the folks at Establish the Run. If you use the code FEAST, 20% discount. 20% discount on arguably the best fantasy, DFS, prop betting website in the business from an information standpoint. EstablishTheRun.com. Very, very cool. Almost as cool as my guy John Daigle. Very unique guy. Looks like he's in the United States, not spending a month in India or Southeast Asia at this point. John, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing well, and it is that time of the year where my first mock draft comes out. I only do 2, and my final one will be the night before the draft. But for everything that I have gotten wrong in my career, I have done, for whatever reason, really well at piecing together the tea leaves and having accurate mock drafts over the last 5 years, I should say. And these things are actually kept score of at thehuddlereport.com. I am the nation's 24th most accurate mocker, ahead of Daniel Jeremiah. So I'm just looking to continue getting better, learn from my mistakes every single year, and this is my first edition, although I believe we may only touch on what stands out to you and the fantasy skill players in this first mock draft that will be available by Thursday morning at EstablishTheRun.com.
Got it. Love it. It's funny because you are really, really good at this. For some reason, when you say 24th, it doesn't sound as good as it actually is.
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing mock drafts. So 24th, I will happily wear that badge anytime. Hang that banner, I don't care.
And the rule is what? You have to submit it by midnight the night before or something?
Yes, you have to get it in the night before, which I always did anyhow. A lot of people tend to wait to see Peter Schrager's and Daniel Jeremiah's final mocks, but I don't like to be persuaded by the masses, and so I like to have my information and put that in the night before and then wipe my hands clean of it.
I love it. All right, so I'm fascinated by some of these for sure. We'll start with the number 1 overall pick. And by the way, why are we doing this? Is it just for fun, or is there a fantasy relevance?
There's it's that time of the year where DraftKings actually just released their props, and I'm sure we'll be doing a specific episode on that later on, like the week before the draft. But it's just the time of the year where these things start to heat up. Shedeur Sanders hasn't even had his pro day yet, so I'm sure we're going to have a lot more information to discuss. It's just that time of the year where I like to do this practice.
Yeah, guess what? I love it. Everybody loves mock drafts. Who doesn't love mock drafts? It's impossible to not click on a mock draft. It's like sugar. All right. Number one overall pick. This seems like this is going to happen. I mean, Sean King said on today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast, he thinks he's the only bona fide quarterback superstar prospect, thinks his ceiling is being a top 5 player. It feels at this point, John, like the Tennessee Titans are going to take Cam Ward number one overall, which is what you have them doing.
Abdul Carter was getting some love early in the process, but whenever there's a quarterback needy team at number one overall, it's very clear that's just what they're going to do. That's what the way the NFL is going. In last year's class that we got multi-year starters out of, I think Cam Ward is probably the 4th or 5th quarterback off the board, sandwiched somewhere between J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. He definitely has arm talent questions, but overall, the Titans rebuilt their offensive line, including with Kevin Zeitler on the inside, as we talked about in past episodes, through free agency. I can't believe they did not do that to allow whomever they have under center, Will Levis at this time, to start in week 1. I think it's going to be Cam Ward.
I would agree. I don't think there's any question about it at this point. Number 2 pick is where it now gets interesting, right? Because there's some talk about the Browns taking Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. There's some consideration that maybe they would take a quarterback because they need a quarterback. But that is not the way that you went, John, at number 2 overall for the Cleveland Browns.
And I'm still completely on the fence, but right now I have the Browns taking the best athlete, in my opinion, in the entire draft, as Andrew Berry has tended to do throughout his career in the first round. And in this case, that is Colorado's Travis Hunter. There are ties here that people are making for Shedeur Sanders, and I think that's because clearly the Browns don't have a quarterback. Right now, Kenny Pickett will be their week 1 starter, and we don't expect them to open the season with that. Yes, they have cap restraints, and so maybe Kirk Cousins doesn't ultimately go there. I keep thinking about, though, when Myles Garrett took the podium to have a press conference once he re-signed that massive deal just last month, he was smiling when he said the team had a quarterback plan. I don't think he shows up to the podium and smiles if that quarterback plan was Kirk Cousins. I think the Browns have something else up their sleeves, quite honestly, in the first round. I'm just not sure it's Shedeur Sanders this early at number 2 overall. The ties I'm talking about, though, Ross, are that Pat Shurmur, Colorado's current OC under Coach Prime, hired Kevin Stefanski as his quarterback coach with the Vikings in 2017. And Cleveland's current quarterback coach is Bill Musgrave, who is reportedly still close friends with Deion Sanders, stemming from their time winning the Super Bowl together with San Francisco. So there could be conversations going back and forth. But again, I'm not so sure it's about Sanders at number 2 overall. I think it could be for Travis Hunter.
Ooh, okay. And what do we think about him from a fantasy standpoint? He's a tough one, John, because we don't really know how he would be used by, and it really depends on the team. I've seen people say if he went to the Patriots, he'd be a full-time receiver. Greg Cosell and many others, myself included, envision him as a full-time corner, part-time receiver. I mean, there'll be a lot of conversation about this in the coming months, but right now, with people that are playing best ball or whatever, what would you do or think about Travis Hunter?
And I talk about these things, rookies from a fantasy lens, on a podcast called Establish the Edge, which is part of course, our friends at Establish the Run using the promo code FEAST. So they can find that Establish the Edge podcast and listen to my thoughts on these rookies in depth. But Travis Hunter has been a hot button player to discuss, so much so that on DraftKings and early best ball drafts right now, he's currently going in the 10th round. And we're talking about the best wide receiver prospect, not even what he can do as a cornerback, but overall the best wide receiver prospect in this draft in the 10th round. And it's because all of us drafting in fantasy early right now have those same questions that you just mentioned. Exactly where is he going to play and how much? Kevin Stefanski recently noted in his pre-draft press conference that he thinks Hunter is a wide receiver that moonlights as a cornerback. But either way, it is a very volatile pick right now because we just don't know how each team views him. And honestly, the way each team views him is completely different than the other. And so we're still taking chances on him because, again, his profile and athleticism is so good, even as a wide receiver. But will he be a full-time wide receiver? We honestly just don't know.
Giants at 3, you have taken Abdul Carter from Penn State. Patriots at 4, you have LSU O-lineman Will Campbell. Jags at 5, Michigan D-tackle Mason Graham. I tend to agree with all of those, by the way. What about 6? The Raiders, Boise State running back Ashton Genty. I saw where the GM came out recently and said, my son said he'd be so mad at me if I don't take Ashton Genty at 6. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, new GM John Spytek even said in his press conference that his son told him he would, quote, never talk to him again if he does not take Ashton Genty because his son is excited to draft him in fantasy. That's obviously not a dead giveaway that this is the way the Raiders are leaning, but given that they brought in Pete Carroll, who maybe it was John Snyder, why the Seahawks historically drafted running backs early with Seattle, but I think Pete Carroll was a part of that too in taking those chances in the backfield, and we know Chip Kelly's offense still runs heavily, not only through pace and volume, but through the running backs and the running game. So I think Ashton Genty, as this team continues to find a new contract extension for Geno Smith and build an offense under Tom Brady and Spytek, I think that Ashton Genty is honestly a perfect fit for a new regime.
All right, so it's the Fantasy Feast podcast, so we need to talk about feasting. How about Huel.com/feast, where you can use my code FEAST to get 15% off your first order plus a free gift. Anybody that's been following, the latest research knows it's about hitting your macros, which is why this Huel Black Edition ready to drink is perfect. How about all the protein that you have? How's 35 grams sound? Plus 27 vitamins and minerals and low in sugar. It is a perfectly balanced meal. New customers visit Huel.com/feast today and use my code FEAST to get 15% off your first order plus a free gift. That's Huel.com/feast. So I had a couple of vodka drinks Saturday night, absolutely delicious, thanks to my friends at Smirnoff, the perfect vodka for crafting delicious cocktails that are easy to make and versatile for any and all fans over 21. Remember, they are official sponsors of the NFL. They're official sponsor of this podcast. The first one was Smirnoff and some banana stuff. That was good. And then the second one had kind of a cinnamon flavor to it. It is fun to try different Smirnoff crafted cocktails. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. The draft will be here in, 3 weeks at this point? Make Smirnoff your number one vodka pick. Boy, I mean, how high would he go in fantasy drafts? I feel like high.
He would, right? Well, I can tell you right now in DraftKings, he's going at the end of the first round. He's going in a log jam of Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Devon Achane. That's how fantasy players already view him before he's even drafted on a team. But honestly, as you saw, he's that good too.
He is really good. All right. Then you got Kelvin Banks to the Jets, the tackle from Texas. Panthers taking Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker. 9 and 10 is where you get spicy, John. Number 9, you have the Saints taking Shedeur Sanders.
And Sanders is going to be someone that in my final mock, I'm not sure yet, even in this one, I'm not sure yet why or how I'm going to get him in. I think there's also an outside chance that Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss, is drafted before Sanders, unless the Browns or Giants trade back into the first round. Like Will Levis's year, Sanders is just a very hard rookie to pinpoint because I think a lot of teams have completely different opinions on opposite spectrums on how they would either start him or develop him or even have him on the roster. I have him going to the Saints at number 9 overall to give Derek Carr someone behind him and use Carr as a bridge, just because I can't imagine Kellen Moore starting his regime with someone like Derek Carr. I think he would want to get more exciting, more athletic at that position. So I have Sanders developing with the Saints right now, but honestly, the Saints could go a number of different ways, and Sanders' stock could go a number of different ways.
Fascinating. But how about 10? The Bears with Cole Kmet taking Penn State tight end Tyler Warren?
And I think the premise of the Bears under Ben Johnson is continue to make life easier for Caleb Williams. And if that's the case, they already shored up their entire offensive line by revamping it through trades and signings in free agency. Braxton Jones is still playing left tackle, but I think he's serviceable enough where they probably still aren't looking at that position in the number 10 overall pick. I think it's going to be either a slot receiver trying to find that power guy like Ben Johnson had with the Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, or continuing to make life easier again through underneath passes and more protection and Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, because that's what he does. He's not really a slot player. He's more of an inline guy who, like Sam Laporta, is very explosive and gets open shallow and over the middle of the field. So I think there's it's considered a dark horse pick right now, but I would think like Tyler Warren is absolutely on the Bears' radar.
Wow, that would really be interesting. At 11, you have the Niners taking a Georgia defender, edge Mykel Williams. Cowboys at 12, Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. I saw where Stephen Jones recently said we need an explosive number 2 receiver. I love how the Cowboys just say stuff.
They say everything, even though they're drafting, honestly, historically, and I think Will McClay is entirely to attribute for all of this, but their drafting has been pretty well outside of the past couple of seasons where they've been struggling to find starters in the early rounds. In this case, though, this is not only a spot where I think they are scouting inside the state, but this is a good bet, in my opinion, to still get on DraftKings. We had established a run, got it early at plus 300 for Matthew Golden to be the first wide receiver taken, even ahead of Arizona wide receiver Ted McMillan, who we'll talk about in a bit. But because of Matthew Golden's, sub 4.240 time at the combine, I think he raised his stock even more. And he's honestly a good receiver. He has a good profile beyond that 40 time, but I can't imagine like the Cowboys did not see that and begin salivating, especially with the need there at wide receiver number 2. So I like Matthew Golden to go first. Last I checked on DraftKings, it's still plus 170 to be the first wide receiver taken, and that's a good bet in my opinion.
Ooh, I love it. I can't wait for the prop bet pre-draft episode. This will be awesome. Although you've already indicated, this is why on Even Money Podcast we do the show Tuesday mornings during the season, because that's a big difference from plus 300 to plus 170 already. All right, what about next up? You've got the Dolphins taking Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membu, and then the Colts. They get their tight end, but not the one people thought in Tyler Warren. Instead, it's Colston Loveland from Michigan.
A receiving tight end, which is something they've always needed. Recall that when you and I did the draft episode last year, that's when it was heavily rumored that the Colts were also going to be in on Brock Bowers, just looking for that receiving threat. I would say the only hang-up on Colston Loveland, who I believe is actually a better receiver than Tyler Warren, not a better overall tight end because he's not really a blocking option, but a better receiver. I think Colston Loveland is the best tight end in this draft. It would help Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones immediately. Having said that, the hang-up is that they lost both their starting center and right guard in free agency, and honestly haven't done anything to address that just yet. So I'm still between a receiving tight end or interior player. I could see the Colts going either direction.
15, you have the Falcons taking A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart. 16, the Cardinals. Back-to-back Ohio State wide receivers in the first round. This time, Emeka Ibuka at 16.
I have the Cardinals pinned with either an offensive tackle or wide receiver in this case, and I usually use my first mock draft for a rough draft for myself to jam 32 players into the first round and see where it fits. And then hopefully, so far it's worked, but hopefully the night before the draft, I will have a much better idea of what happens when the dominoes fall and the direction we think they'll fall. But right now, I do think the Cardinals are live for a second wide receiver, especially one who plays primarily on the inside like Emeka Ibuka does out of Ohio State. Just exclusively a slot receiver to play inside Marvin Harrison and continue developing not only that offense, but Kyler Murray.
It's funny because Greg Cosell recently compared him to Tyler Boyd. You know, like when Tyler Boyd was in his prime, he just thinks Ibuka is going to be a really, really solid pro.
He's dominant. He's dominant. It's just about how many coaches want to draft a exclusive slot receiver early. But we saw that with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, these guys are still very, very good players, obviously out of the slot.
Right, and Smith and Jigba is now more or less the number one receiver for the Seahawks. All right, at 17, you have the Bengals taking Oregon defensive lineman Derek Harmon. The Seahawks desperately need to get better on the interior offensive lines. You have them getting Alabama interior offensive lineman Tyler Booker. 19, the Bucks take Marshall edge rusher Mike Green. 20, I've seen this in a lot of mocks. And by the way, last year, everybody and their brother had the Broncos taking Bo Nix, and it happened. Now, a lot of people have the Broncos selecting North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton at 20.
If Ashton Jeanty was not in this draft, Omarion Hampton would be in a tier of his own at the running back class. It is a very deep class, so much so that I will, even over the next few weeks, think about this pick heavily, because George Paton did come out at his pre-draft press conference and say that this running back class is so deep, he can see getting one and be very happy with it in rounds 2 through 6. But Omarion Hampton is a player who's been teased in the first round between so many different teams. That includes the Cowboys, Commanders later on. And so I think he's a fit here, given that Javonte Williams obviously lost to Dallas in free agency, and Audric Estime had ignorable draft capital and still had major fumbling issues coming out of college for Denver. I believe Sean Payton's idea is to continue building around Bo Nix and his rookie contract, continuing like Jaden Daniels with the Commanders, making life easier for his rookie quarterback. So Omarion Hampton is just a player who honestly fits the bill here.
Two things I really like: drinking Labatt Blue Light and getting free stuff for drinking Labatt Blue Light or doing something I was already going to do anyway. That's the deal with rewards.labattusa.com. It's called Buy Beer, Get Gear. Whenever and wherever you buy Labatt, just make sure you take a picture of the receipt and then upload it to rewards.labattusa.com. Then you can start to get sweet gear like that mini fridge. That's amazing. Rewards.labattusa.com. 21, this would be juicy. Steelers taking Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart.
You know what would be juicier is that I don't think I'm going to have the courage to pull the trigger. Give me 3 weeks to decide. I think Jalen Milroe, Oklahoma quarterback, is also, or Alabama quarterback, is also very live for this pick at number 21 overall, and you don't see his name at all in the first round of mock drafts. The Steelers have obviously done a lot of work on quarterbacks because there is just no way they enter the season having given DK Metcalf $150 million and then letting Mason Rudolph throw him the ball in week 1. It's just not possible. And so they are taking a quarterback in the first round. I'm just not sure which one. Jackson Dart's the one who's most connected to the first round, but the Steelers did notably, Mike Tomlin, have dinner with Jalen Milroe already. They were also in on Justin Fields whenever he came out in the draft. Maybe they just view, under Mike Tomlin, they want to go in a more athleticism direction under, with the offense. And Milroe would fit that bill maybe even better than Jackson Dart. But I do think they're taking a quarterback at number 21.
Wow. That's very interesting. Last time they did that right around there, it was Kenny Pickett. And evidently did not work out as well as
Yeah.
they were hoping that it would. 22, you have the Chargers taking Michigan D lineman Kenneth Grant. 23, the Packers take Tennessee edge James Pierce. 24, the Vikings take the South Carolina safety Nick Emmanwori. 25, the Texans. Boy, they would be thrilled if they got Josh Simmons at 25, the Ohio State left tackle.
And we know that Texans GM Nick Caserio also has a very big excitement every draft to draft exclusively like blue blood Power 5 players. He loves his big school guys. And so either Donovan Jackson or Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, I believe he'd be very excited to get.
You got the Rams taking Texas cornerback Jahdae Barron. 27, the Ravens get a safety, Georgia safety Malachi Starks. The Lions get their Boston College edge rusher and Donovan Ezeruku. The Commanders, wow, Will Johnson at 29. A lot of people thought he'd go top 10 earlier. This one really jumped out to me. The final skill guy we're talking about, the Bills at 30 get Arizona wide receiver T-Mac. Why is he falling like this?
So, again, Ted McMillan is still the favorite to be the first wide receiver drafted, but he has to be the right fit. Unlike Emeka Egbuka, who is a power slot guy, Ted McMillan is a big outside receiver. And so you start looking at who needs a big outside receiver, and I just don't know if there are the correct fits in the first round, given the other needs these teams have. I saw Daniel Jeremiah linked Ted McMillan to the Chargers, but even that's number 22 overall. And so McMillan's a guy who could go as early to the Raiders as 6 or fall this drastically in the draft, and the dominoes just change for mocks everywhere. I think right now, at least the way it fits, McMillan is a player who falls, but still definitely will be in the first round. And so I have him going to the Bills because they still have multiple needs at wide receiver there after losing, for whatever we think about Mac Hollins, still a big deal that they lost their big downfield threat, like I said, Ted McMillan is, and of course Amari Cooper in free agency.
Wow, that would be very, very interesting to see how that unfolds. If T-Mac, they can get him later. He actually reminds me a little bit of the guy they took last year out of Florida State, who kind of had an up and down season in Keon Coleman.
And I don't know what they view Keon Coleman as in year 2, since he was hit or miss, depending whether he played with Amari Cooper at that end of the year.
Chiefs taking Oregon offensive tackle Josh Connerly. That could definitely happen. 32 Eagles. North Dakota State offensive lineman Gray Zabel. I don't see that one. I think they're more likely to take a defensive lineman, but we shall see. It's certainly possible. Terrific stuff, John. I'm excited to get into some of these prospects as well as the prop bets over the next couple weeks. I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.